Dear viewers, democracy collapses when political participation depends on approval from those in power, and Bangladesh has now crossed that line. The deliberate exclusion of the Awami League from the February 2026 election is not a technical irregularity, but a calculated move with serious implications for Bangladesh's stability as well as South Asia's security landscape. What is unfolding is not a genuine democratic process, rather, a managed political outcome enforced through bans, prosecutions, administrative erasure, and fear. History in South Asia shows that when broad participation was denied, extremist and criminalized power get to find more space and strength. They continue to destabilize the nation, the country, as well as threat national and regional security. In this episode, we will dive deep into this particular issue in light of the current political landscape in Bangladesh with a panel of experts today. I'm Professor Bidit Day, will host the session, and I'm very pleased to have a panel of experts. First, let me introduce you with the team. I'm very pleased to have Mr. Syed Badrullah Hassan, editor and journalist, Ms. Rana Meher, educationist, teacher, and human rights activist. And in order to help me with this particular show, I have co-host Mr. Anwar Shadad Jihan, who is an aerospace engineer and columnist. Without any further ado, I will get into the discussion right away. So may I request Mr. Syed Badrullah Hassan to shed some light on the consequences of an election which is not participated by a major national political party such as the Awami League. Over to you, Mr. Hassan.
Thank you very much for having me on the program. Yes, we are in a difficult situation, and I wouldn't say only difficult, it's a terrible situation where we have an unconstitutional government holding onto political power. In other words, it's an illegitimate government that has been running or trying to run the show for the last 17 years. Now, the election that they're talking of, there are two points that I would like to make. First of all, will the February 12th election at all take place? If it does take place, it will have no credibility because you can't have an election in a country where the largest political party, the former ruling party, and indeed the party which brought liberation to the country is forced to stay out, is compelled to stay out. So let's assume that on February 12th, an election does take place. You don't have about 35 to 45 voters, perhaps more, who usually vote for the Awami League. They will not go to the polling stations. So we can imagine a situation where the streets will be empty on February 12th. The voting booths will be empty. But let's say they rush through an election somehow, and they try to, the people who are in power today, they'll try to convince the world that the election has taken place, but then there'll be no credibility. So from the evening of the election, when the votes are counted, or maybe the results are being declared, from the next day, from the morning of the next day, the country will run into greater instability. That's one point. Then the second point is, assuming that we have a credible election, and the government, the regime, the Yunus regime is forced to go for a credible election, then the danger is not for the country. The danger is not for the Awami League. The danger is for Yunus and his council of advisors. Will they agree to have a credible election? Now, under Yunus, let's say Yunus agrees to have a credible election, and he wants the Awami League, he makes it known publicly that the Awami League can take part in the election. Will the Awami League join the election on his watch? Because in the last 17 months, he has presided over everything that has been anti-Awami League, indeed anti-Bangladesh and anti-history. So for a credible election to be held, the country has to go back to the caretaker system, a decision on which was recently reached by the Appellate Division of the Supreme Court. Although the stipulation, the condition there is that the caretaker system will take effect at the next election, the election after this one, after the one that is supposed to be held in February. Now, that caretaker system could be brought forward, and the president, in consultation with the political parties, in consultation with the judiciary, could bring could have the caretaker system take effect before the election, and that caretaker system, if a caretaker system is in place, that system, that caretaker administration will decide when and how to have an election. Obviously, the Awami League, again, if a caretaker system is installed, is in place, the Awami League will insist that the time is too short for a credible election to take place, and the regime that takes over from Yunus, that will be compelled to set a new election schedule for the country. So these are the possibilities that I see, and frankly, February 12th, I don't see any election taking place. If an election does take place, it will be a farce indeed. We have seen farcical elections in the past also in Bangladesh. So the country should not be put to a situation where it grows. You pointed out the issue of instability. Yes, the country has been unstable, has been in an anarchic situation for the last 17 months. Day one, from the morning of February 13, if this so-called election takes place, the anarchy, the instability will only increase, and Bangladesh will be pushed into further decline. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. So you are saying that there is every possibility that this February 12th election may not happen at all, and we can see that there is genuine sense of uncertainty and suspicion amongst people that whether or not this government is genuinely interested to hold a free, fair, and credible election. And the second point is that even if it happens under the current circumstances and without the participation of the major political parties such as the Awami League, this will be an absolute shambolic election. It will not have no credibility whatsoever. But also, we need to look at the broader picture. May I ask you on that point that it's not just about casting vote, arranging the day of the election, right? It's also about a process which requires participation, debates, discussion from various quarters, all possible quarters if necessary, in within a political sort of sphere. And is that happening at all? Because we can see that a significant part, as you mentioned, 40 to 45% of the voters normally cast their support for the Army League, and that not being present, how that the balance in the political environment is affected.
That will be affected very much, deeply, in fact. And let's put it this way: if the election is held, if the election of February 12th is rushed through, let's say, hypothetically, the BNP wins a majority of seats. But the BNP also will know that this election will have been a shambolic is the term that you use, which is quite appropriate. So what will need to happen on or before February is for a political change to take place, and a change in the mindset of the people who happen to be lording it over the country now, Yunus and his people. So now, Dr. Yunus is not willing, will not be willing to leave power at this stage, because he knows if elections are held credibly, credible elections are held, there's a strong possibility that the Awami League will come back either as the party of government or as the largest party in the opposition. I refer to the fact that it might be in the opposition because of all the destruction that has taken place. Its offices have been destroyed. Its political figures are in jail. Many of them have left the country. So it will need to reorganize things. Now, in this situation, we need in Bangladesh, what is needed now is a situation where absolute legality, constitutional provisions will need to be reinforced. Now, assuming again that the election that we desire, the kind of election that we desire, where all political parties take part. First of all, the decision to impose a ban on the Awami League was itself illegal. And you see, The irony is this illegal decision was imposed on the Awami League by a government which by itself is illegal. So what happens? What will happen here is if if the floor is open, if the space is open for all political parties to take charge, and if the elections are held, what will result? I am at one with people. If we hear these common people, even common people on the streets, the middle classes, the rickshaw pullers, the bus drivers, the hawkers, they are all for the Awami League. So let's say the Awami League wins the election and Awami League goes to power. But then the difficulty for the Awami League is that it will have to spend a whole lot of time recovering what has been lost in the last 17 months. In other words, Bangladesh, the People's Republic of Bangladesh itself has to be restored. These people, in association with their mobs, I mean, it has been mob rule all over, they presided over the destruction of the country. The country has been hollowed out, and that will be a difficult job. And for that difficult job to be done, I think it will also be the responsibility of parties like the BNP. Now, the BNP has always claimed that it is a pro-liberation party. There are freedom fighters of the party, but then the BNP's record is also not very clean because it has also had anti-liberation elements inside it. But even so, in order to lead the country, in order to have the country move towards a democratic, stable democratic future, the BNP will have to reach out to the Awami League. If the BNP thinks that the February 12 elections are okay and it will be happy with it, well, it cannot be happy because within the BNP itself, there's a kind of disgruntled. There are disgruntled politicians. If you think of somebody like Barrister Rumin Farhana, she has been thrown out of the party. So BNP has to get its house in order. And for the Awami League, I would say the Awami League also needs to strategize, to develop a strategy on how to come back to power, not just how to restore itself in the wide open public space, but how to come back to power. Because without the Awami League and pro-liberation forces coming back to power, we cannot see. We do not have any hope of seeing the back of these people under Yunus who have ruined the country all these 7 months. So it's a difficult road ahead. What we have right now is just the country, is just the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Everything else has been or is being destroyed by Muhammad Yunus and his regime. And finally, I would say that if a credible election is held, and a nationalist government, Bengali nationalist government, I'm not talking about a Bangladeshi nationalist government, a Bengali nationalist government comes to office, one of its primary tasks will be to see to it the people who have destroyed the country the last 17 months, all the way from Yunus right to the bottom, they are brought to justice. They cannot be allowed to escape.
Thank you, Mr. Answer. I'm really tempted. I know we have another panelist here, but I'm really tempted to ask a follow-up question on this point. You mentioned about the pro-liberation forces in Bangladesh, and for our international audience, is it fair to say that this is actually the center-left ground of politics, who holds the center-left part of the political spectrum, and also the case that in a Westminster style of democracy, historically we have two-party political system, and so Awami League is the de facto left to center-left. They actually lead that particular trend or ideologies within Bangladeshi political landscape, and we do not see effectively any other party having any sort of possibility or strength or any chance to take over that position. Would you agree, or would you like to elaborate on that?
No, you're absolutely right. The left of center Awami League is there. BNP is, to all intents and purposes, it's a rightist party. Right? It has always been in the right. And again, but when it comes to a question of priorities, when it comes to a question of the political future of the country, one has to acknowledge the fact that in Bangladesh, over the last few decades, over the last 3 decades or even more, the country has unofficially, informally developed a two-party system. On the one hand, you have the Awami League. On the other hand, we have the BNP. The other parties are there. The left parties, Communist Party, Socialist Party, but they have they have not had much of an impact in the country. And at the other end, you have parties like the Jamaat Islami and all other Islamist forces whose ideology or whose beliefs are not wedded to the ideology of Bangladesh. So in future, I would say that when politics gets normal, politics will get normal, of course, but when politics does get normal, it will be for the Awami League and the BNP to work out a modus vivendi by which democracy can be promoted. We have had too many mishaps in the past. The two parties have collided on several occasions, but then I think both parties, Awami League and the BNT, have to reach out to it. But yes, you're right. The Awami League has to make its position clear. It has to develop its strategy. And for the last 17 months, people have waited for a clear strategy to be developed by the Awami League. It's time for the Awami League to come forward and inform the country of what it plans to do before and beyond February this year. And for the BNP, the better thing to do would be to realize that it cannot anymore depend on parties like the Jamaat Islami, its former junior partner, which has now actually gone further ahead than the BNP. The BNP has been left behind. So, in order to survive as a political party, in order to reclaim its lost ground, the BNP has to reach out to the Awami League. So, together, these two parties hold the key to Bangladesh's democratic future. Although their ideologies are different, the differences will be there. We all acknowledge that. But beyond these two political parties, we have this Muhammad Yunus, the Jamaat, and all the Islamist parties together. This combined, Yunus, Jamaat, Islamist parties, this combined has to be pushed aside electorally so that Bangladesh can get back on the right track.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. That's very insightful. Now I'll go to Ms. Rana Meher. And while we see that there is a deliberate way of stifling and also prosecuting and banning Awami League and trying to make them irrelevant in the political process, but Awami League also has actually urged the nation to boycott the election, and that is quite an interesting development. That Awami League, arguably the largest political party in Bangladesh, who still has got support from 40 to 45% voters, have urged people not to take part in the election. How do you assess this situation? Over to you, Ms. Meher.
Thank you, Mr. Day. If I can rephrase your question, or if I can rephrase what you just said, before Awami League boycotted the election, this illegal government boycotted Awami League from participating in this election. So it is not like Awami League decided to boycott this election. Awami League has always been a very election-focused, election-oriented party from their very beginning. Some of the election that Awami League participated in, when the other political parties, they did not agree Awami League's participation, and there were some long standing argument if Awami League joining that election was the right move or not. But because Awami League being Awami League always was very pro-election party and still is. What Awami League is urging nation to boycott is this particular election. And there are some very good reasons behind it. One reason is Awami League itself is not allowed to participate. Being the largest party in Bangladesh, you said arguably, I would say it is not arguably, it is evident by numbers. Even when Awami League lost the election, the numbers of votes, the numbers of seats they have got, it was phenomenal. So Awami League is the largest party, and also if the largest party, one of the most important party, is banned in an election, I do not know how the election is democratic, not only by national measure, by election measure as well, by international measure as well. So, Mr. Day, to understand, I'm sure you guys know, I'm just informing the viewers, to understand and to agree with if the election was democratic and credible or not, there are some international set standards. Standards set by Copenhagen Document 1990, standards set by ODIHR, standards set by International Parliamentary Union, standards set by UN, and all these standards, they agree on something in unison. That is, there are two things. One is every single person, he or she, they have right to seek for political affiliation either by themselves or by the party of their choice. So this election is making sure that that is not happening if that person wants to go for the election with the mandate from Awami League. So that is not happening. Second is, again, by these four international bodies, the standard is set. Every voter, everybody has the right to vote for the party of their choice. So, as Mr. Alson said, 35 to 40% the number can be much more larger than this. Again, they are falling behind of the standard. They are not allowed to vote for the party of their choice. So, if we forget everything of other international measure, other international standard, that we are falling behind. But if we just think about these two international standards, the election is failing straight away before it even took place. So not only Awami League, I do not think any sane party will agree to go and ask the nation to go for this election. And if we can think about the pre-election measure, that also those four standards that I have mentioned, they ask the observing bodies to look into the pre-election events that are taking place. It was very evident the election will be a sham election because we have already seen people are doing some videos with some ballot paper. They went to some countries in Middle East. Some of the activists themselves, they said, and they showed us the evidence that they asked for a postal vote, but the postal vote was received by other people. So you can see, even before the election, even without Awami League being in the election, if this is taking place, why would the largest democratic secular party named Awami League would ask the nation to participate? Of course not. And also, Mr. Day, if I can talk about the referendum that is taking place in the same day. This referendum is not an ordinary referendum. This referendum is a tool to reset the history of Bangladesh that Muhammad Yunus trying since he took the chair in 8th of August 2024. So that referendum, which are like in July Sanad, that's what they're trying to pass with that referendum, has 48 of different elements, and no publicity or nothing, no information about what is actually in the July Charter. The government itself very illegally is advertising for yes vote, which is of course is conflict of interest, which stands up with a very important question: is the government being partial? No. Is the government being partial? Yes, the government is not being impartial. The government is being partial since very beginning. So I would agree, rather than questioning why the Awami League is urging nation to boycott that election, I would actually stand with Awami League on that. And I will be saying that Awami League took the right decision to guide the nation to boycott that election, not because that election is not fulfilling the international standard, but also that election is coming up with a referendum which is illegal, which is unconstitutional, which is wrong in many other ways. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Day.
Thanks, Ms. Meher. Just a follow-up question on the referendum. We can see that the government is showing a lot of interest, and they are proactively campaigning for the yes without without properly, and that certainly puts their position into question whether or not they are any more, they can claim themselves to be a neutral administrator for an election. The second is that, and you have said that this can fundamentally change the characteristics of the nation. This can potentially redefine our our foundational principles of the country. Could you please elaborate on that for our international audience, that the Bangladesh had its independence on 4 foundational principles, and this referendum is a way to redefine and completely change the country from those 4 principles?
Sure, Mr. Day. Before I go to that referendum, can I just quickly clarify why did I say that the government is not being impartial? Um, so the government, as I said and you said, the government is in actively publicizing to ask people to do yes vote. So again, it is going against the international standard. The government cannot ask people to decide. Government responsibility is, if they want to do a referendum, government responsibility to arrange it and inform people what is in there. Then the people will make an informed choice about the referendum. But what the government is doing, the government is using all the administration to campaign for the yes vote. The government, actually, the Central Bank of Bangladesh, couple of days ago, the governor of the Central Bank of Bangladesh, he instructed the bank employees, if any of the NGO, they want to publicize the yes vote, by the government instruction, the central government have to fund the NGO to do that. And you can understand how I don't know how to put it in a politically correct way, but it sounds insane to me.
I mean, just to bring a sort of a kind of a comparison,
Yeah.
during the Brexit referendum, of course, the then
Mm.
British Prime Minister David Cameron and the Conservative government had a position, and the Conservative Party leadership, anyone in the party who actually chose for Brexit, they had to resign from the cabinet to campaign for that. But yes, all political parties and personal are likely to have some allegiance to some ideologies. But what is not acceptable is that the government machineries, administration, government spending are used in order to support a particular part or side of the referendum.
Exactly, Mr. Day. As you mentioned, Brexit, David Cameron was barred, the government was barred from doing any sort of publicizing the Brexit vote under the Purdah law. The law actually barred government to do any kind of publication, either Brexit yes or Brexit no. So of course the government in Bangladesh doing complete opposite. And as you ask about July Sanad, if I can say in a simple way, there are 48 elements, and the voter will be asked only 4 questions. And in these 4 questions, they have to say yes or no. Suppose, and that 4 questions, and sorry, that 48 law, if that's what they want to pass, those 48 elements of it, they are trying to reset the core values of the constitution of Bangladesh, such as secularism, Bengali nationalism, and others. And also, they are also proposing to change the parliament in a way that British Parliament works. Now, my question to the international authority and the viewers seeing from Bangladesh, have we informed about that whole process is taking place? Such as, I am a voter, I agree, maybe 5 of this 48 proposal. But if I want to vote yes, I cannot say I only agree with 5. I have to actually agree to that 48 of the proposals. So how this is legal, how this is correct, this is not. So voters are not being informed. Voters are not they are not given any informed choice. And I am pretty sure by the constitution of Bangladesh now that this government took an oath to to maintain that constitution. The referendum they're proposing, it is
They
unconstitutional.
are
So it is
they're
illegal.
surely contravening,
Of course,
and
it is illegal,
and
unconstitutional.
yeah.
So that is
Thanks,
correct.
Ms. Meher. Thank you so much. Um, Dear viewers, so far we have touched upon two major aspects. One is that the current government, whether or not they have sincere intent to do an election, whether or not they have legal status to arrange an election, and even if they do have, what they're doing are absolutely questionable. At the same time, we have also touched upon a very vital issue on the referendum, which is being tagged with the general election. So, but the fact of the matter remains still same, as both of the panelists mentioned about Awami League being not part of the election, and what happens historically in Bangladesh when the Awami League is either absent from the political scenario or being forcefully barred, or they voluntarily abstain from election. I would request Ms. Anwar Jihan to take us through the history of Bangladesh and how Awami League is such a crucial, critical, and vital part of Bangladesh politics, and of course, for any general election. Over to you, Mr. Jihan.
Thank you, Professor De, for connecting today. Democracy, as we know it, is facing an existential crisis in Bangladesh today. After ousting the constitutional Awami League government in a violent insurrection, this illegal occupying force of Yunus is heading toward conducting a one-sided sham election. Different components of the state mechanism are working together to kill democracy in Bangladesh. Through a completely illegal executive action, they have closed all doors for Awami League, the largest secular party of Bangladesh, to participate in the election. Now, Mr. De, for the Awami League to experience such a sweeping ban is not a new phenomenon. Throughout history, whenever dictators were empowered, military rulers were in charge, Awami League, being the largest protector of democracy, faced injustice. After the Awami League won a sweeping majority in the general election of 1970, dictator Yahya banned the Awami League. The ban, the repression, and denial of political participation directly triggered political collapse, mass violence, and eventually the liberation war. Yunus is walking in the same direction. Now, this is the story of ban on Awami League, a sweeping ban. Throughout history, different components, different elements of society tried to conduct sham election while excluding Awami League. And history was not kind to them, those who did that. In 1988, General Ershad conducted an election that the Awami League boycotted. And we all know what happened in 1996 when Begum Jia, by a sham election, tried to hold on to power while excluding the Awami League. Her government survived only 12 days. So the history should teach us a lesson. Mr. Day, if we look at the South Asian region and look at the other countries, we can find some similar cases. For example, take a look at the Islamic Republic of Pakistan that banned Imran Khan's name, his party PTI's and party's logo cricket bat from election. Now, Mr. Day, for a country like Pakistan, where 40% of the population are literally illiterate, the logo is a crucial factor. And we all know historically Pakistan have experienced military dictatorships, coup, counter coup. It is their normal culture. But this forceful exclusion of Imran Khan's party from election did not help in mitigating their instability.
And also, may I add on this point that Since the last general elections in Pakistan, we all know Asim Munir, the army chief, is the de facto epicenter of power in Pakistan. So effectively, when you exclude a large political party from the process, you actually rest the power with non-democratic forces.
Exactly. And we can also take a look at Sri Lanka and Nepal because both of these countries also faced some sort of disturbances in their governance. But right after they faced that disturbance, they tried to go back to traditional democracy where all voices matter. They did not ban any political party. Sri Lanka's Rajapaksa's party was allowed to compete. In Nepal, what we are seeing today, unfortunately, very unfortunate for us Bangladeshis, that the Nepali interim leader is warning that she does not want Nepal to be a Bangladesh. Now, Professor De, 17, 18 months ago, people across the globe were trying to be Bangladesh. 17 months on, people are trying to avoid being Bangladesh. It is very unfortunate. When you try to exclude the largest political party of the country, this is what happens. Instability follows. So, to conclude, I would like to echo Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and say that the international community, in particular the United States, has a duty here, a duty to ensure that any election is free, fair, and all-inclusive. Back to you, Professor De.
Thank you, Mr. Jihan. The last point you mentioned, that's where I will start, is about few months back or a few years back that we had a very iconic statement from a political figure in Pakistan who said that, for God's sake, please make us Bangladesh. Yeah. He urged to the then political elites in Pakistan. And now, with all due respect to Nepal, but of course Bangladesh's economy, size, population, and progression is significantly ahead of Nepal. And Nepali interim government is saying that we do not want to be Bangladesh. It is a sheer embarrassment for a nation like ours. And on that note, Mr. Hassan, I will come back to you that one of the reasons that we can see that this whole landscape is changing, and that is benefiting in a way the likes of Jamaat Islami and their right-wing alliances. And also from this presentation of Mr. Jihan, we can also understand that non-democratic forces, be it military regime, be it extremist elements, they get more strength and momentum when the due democratic processes were not followed. So how do you see, in the context of Bangladesh, the rise of extremism in the current situation? Thank you.
Thank you again. If we go back to our recent history, in fact, to the question of the rise of extremism, now we have seen in the past, in the last 54 years, in fact, immediately 3.5 years into freedom, we saw the rise of these anti-liberation forces. Now, a lot of people will take umbrage at this description of people as being anti-liberation, but that's a fact that we have lived with. Now, here, what we have today, if we look at Nepal, as has been pointed out by Professor Jihan, the Nepalese Prime Minister does not, the Nepalese interim Prime Minister does not want Nepal to become a Bangladesh. Now, and you pointed out just now, that is an embarrassment, because Bangladesh only 17, 18 months ago, during the time of the Awami League, during the time of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, it was referred to as a role model for the developing world, for much of the world, for much of the South, of this North-South divide. And then we have the Sri Lanka. They are on their road to democracy. But the difference between Bangladesh on the one hand and Nepal and Sri Lanka on the other is that in Bangladesh, it was a well-planned conspiracy. In Muhammad Yunus's words, a meticulously designed conspiracy to destabilize the country. This conspiracy has been going on, and the ruling circles in Bangladesh or civil society did not actually understand what was happening. So we are now in that situation. So And then you see, this conspiracy did not simply stop at a removal of the Awami League government from power. It went on, and all these symbols of liberation. Bangladesh, the Bangladesh's proudest moment is the War of Liberation. We went to war. We lost 3 million people. 200, anywhere between 200,000 to 400,000 of Bengali women were raped by Pakistani soldiers. Whole towns and villages were destroyed. So this conspiracy that has been going on since August 2024 is akin to the conspiracy, to the massacres, to the destruction of the nation that we saw in 1971. So in other words, 2024 was a replay of 1971. And because in 1971, we managed to defeat the Pakistani army, Pakistan Occupation Army, as we may refer to it. But and in Bangladesh, in independent Bangladesh, to this conspiracy to destabilize the country has been going on. I refer to the question, if I may go back to the issue of referendum. Ms. Mayer pointed out very well. See, she talked about the referendum, the Awami League being an election-oriented party. If you recall, in the 1970 election, just before the 1970 election, Maulana Bhashani's National Awami Party suddenly decided to boycott the election, and people wondered whether the election would be credible. The Awami League maintained its position. It went through an election. Yahya Khan decreed a legal framework order in early 1970, according to which all political parties will have to operate and take part in the election. Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman gave short shrift to the LFO. He simply said the 6 points are a referendum on Bangladesh's future. So people voted for the Awami League. And later also, during the times of General I refer to here particularly to the 1986 election during General Ershad's time. And we spoke. I happened to be witness to that meeting. When the election in 1986 took place, Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League, they took part in the election, and she said, and all the other Awami League leaders who were present with her, they said that the plan was for the Awami League to contest for 150 seats, the BNP for the remaining 150 seats. At the last moment, the BNP backed out, and later on, the BNP accused the Awami League of backstabbing the people. That is not true. They didn't. They backed out at the last moment. So, in other words, the Awami League has been an election-oriented party. And as for referendums, yes. Now, what kind of government conducts a referendum? In Bangladesh, we have had military regimes conduct referendums. We have Yunus coming forth with his own referendum. The fact is, a referendum has to be conducted on issues that are narrated or mentioned by a government, an elected government in power. But in Bangladesh, two military regimes and now the Yunus regime, all military regimes are illegal. And so is Yunus's government. So their referendums, whatever they decide, whatever they did in the past or they might do in the future about referendum, they will be unethical, unconstitutional, illegal, and void of any constitutional authority. So the point here is that simply we need to go back to a situation where Bangladesh needs to recover. But then Bangladesh's international standing has gone down. Tens of thousands of garment factory workers are without jobs. Prices are rising. Nobody is doing anything about that. Now there were jail breaks right before the removal, the ouster of the Awami, the overthrow of the Awami League, and after that, those prisoners. How many of those people who broke out of jail have been captured? Arms, weapons, they have not been captured. Now today I saw on social media the Home Affairs advisor. He is trying to reassure the country that the stolen arms, the weapons that have not been recovered, will not be used to disturb the election. How does he know? See, his government has not been able to do anything. Law and order has been on the slide. And these people, I think they live in a world of make-believe of their own. They don't know what they're saying today. They don't know what they'll say tomorrow. And another advisor said the law advisor, he said in the time of this government, the Indian expansionism, in his words, has been done away with. How does he know? Because when S. Jaishankar was here recently to convey Modi's message on Mrs. Khaleda Zia's death, he went and met him, and he was very friendly with him. He looked very friendly. In fact, he looked very servile. So how do these people decide? I mean, can you imagine these people who have never been in government? They have been trying to run a country, and they're trying to run a country, but then they have run this country to the ground, and that is our tragedy. So, which is why, see, the people of Nepal are going to have a good election because all political parties are taking part. The same thing goes for Sri Lanka. But here in Bangladesh, there is an animus. These people who hold the authority today, they have a particular grudge against the Awami League. Now, Awami League has had enemies since Pakistani times. Ayub Khan hated the Awami League. Yahya Khan did the same. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto did the same. General Zia, General Ershad, and Begum Khaleda Zia's BNP. They've always been, arrayed against the Awami League. So, and Yunus has beaten them all. So, but then the point is, they do not realize that the kind of election or referendum, and the referendum, they're trying to change the entire nature of the country. See, we have an academic, a Bangladeshi American academic, imported from abroad, and he decides that the name of the country will be changed. And can you imagine a constitution adopted by the Constituent Assembly of 300 members in 1972, with people like Dr. Kamal Hussain at the helm? That constitution, the sanctity of that constitution, these are supposed to be under them. This constitution has to be changed. And there was one young advisor. He's no more an advisor. He took the oath of office, you see, under this government, and he took the oath of office from President Muhammad Shahabuddin. Immediately after taking the oath of office, he pulled down Bangabandhu's portrait from Bango Bhavan. This was outrageous. And all these lawless activities that have been going on, all these anti-state activities that have been going on, nothing has been done to correct them. No action has been taken. But then again, people might ask, why has no action been taken? Frankly, this is what we have in Bangladesh is a cabal and a government, a regime, which is not a government. You can't call it a government. It was foisted on us through conspiracy made at home and abroad. So if you
Thanks,
remember,
Mr. Yeah.
so we have the situation. So we have an unconstitutional government, and we have an anti-national government in power these days. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hassan. I'll come back to Ms. Meher in a minute. But Mr. Jahan, could you please do a quick presentation in less than 2 minutes? I'm extremely conscious of time, right? About what we are seeing right now, Jamaat-e-Islami, akin to Muslim Brotherhood in some other countries, which has got history of genocide, which has history of terrorism, militancy, extremism, is now gaining power and strength. Could you please just show some slides on that?
Yeah, I'll be very brief since we are running short on time. But the crucial factor here is Awami League is biggest proponent of secularism. Secularism is part of our Bengali identity. So when Awami League is not in the play, the extremist forces gain momentum. And that's what we have seen throughout the last 18 months. And we have seen all the atrocities that they have committed. What we are seeing is that all the extremist fractions and the religious parties are forming alliance. Jamaat-e-Islami and the NCP formed the 11-party alliances. And what we and many political commentators and analysts are believing is that this illegal Yunus government's aim is to bring these extremist forces to power. Now, the risk is that Bangladesh is a Muslim majority country. Most of the people are moderate, not extreme, right? Our religious philosophy is also moderate. But at the same time, our people, even though they are not extremist, they are somewhat extremist tolerant. And they are very sentimental and sensitive when it comes to religion. And Jamaat-e-Islami is exploiting this. They are playing the religion card and approaching the voters in their campaign and using religion. We have seen various Jamaat leaders making insane remarks.
Yeah.
as if they're selling the ticket to heaven. We have seen a Coxbajar Jamaat leader claiming that if Jamaat does not sell the ticket to heaven, who will? And then we have seen other Jamaat leaders claiming that if people don't vote for Jamaat, their faith will suffer. So this is the state of Bangladesh today, where
Thank you.
extremists are gaining
Thank you, Mr.
momentum.
Jihan.
Back to you, Professor Day.
Yeah, thanks. Now I'll go to Ms. Meher, and actually the last slide of Mr. Jihan reinforces what you said about the electoral standards, the procedural standards, which are not being followed at all. These sort of statements should have been severely prevented and should be severely dealt with. So, and at the same time, I would also like you to tell us about what Mr. Jihan said about the secular texture of Bangladesh, our identity, our cultural heritage, which do not conform with anything of extremism. So how do you see that the current political landscape is supporting the rise of extremism?
Thank you, Mr. Day. I think Jihan said those people, they're in power now. They're, did you say they're extremism friendly? I mean, I think you are being very polite. I would say they have got very loud and clear extremism mindset in them. They are a bit clever to show this to public. That's why maybe it looks like they're extremism friendly, but they're not extremist. And that July movement that Mr. Asan was talking about, if I can quickly add something onto it. In July, the extremism elements that we are seeing now, we have witnessed this in July 2024 in that so-called July movement. Those police, even with the government calculation, government number, at least 49 of the member of police were murdered brutally, and the Awami League, the member supporter of Awami League, how many of them they were brutally murdered or tortured, we do not even know. And all these people, they were given indemnity by the government. So the government decided not to bring those people who murdered police, who murdered a secular Awami League politician.
Just to add more specific, so according to the UN report, 832 were casualties caused by security forces. The rest, which is total is 1,400, right? So round about 650 were killed by the mob and the anarchists.
Exactly. And thank you, Mr. Dave, for this input. And all of this heinous crime, those criminals are roaming freely, claiming, bragging what they did in July 2024, and they are given indemnity. So this is
and just to add, many of them later on claimed to be part of Jamaat Islami student wing Shibir.
Exactly. Yeah. Many of them did, and again, proudly bragged about what they did in July 2024. So since July 2024, those people who are in power now, Jamaat Islami and other Islamic political parties, other Islamic right-wing parties, they were basically preparing their field to show up. And we have seen that other Islamic right-wing parties, such as Hifazat-e-Islami, Hizb ut-Tahrir was banned in Bangladesh. I believe they're still banned in paper, but we have witnessed how they're openly publicizing their opinion on many things, and police are not doing enough. The government is not doing enough to stop it. And Mr. Day, why does it happen? It happens because the largest secular political party of Bangladesh is not in the scene. And it is not uncommon in Bangladesh only. This is the phenomena that we have seen in many other countries. Sorry. When there is a large vacuum of secular party, when they are not there, that large vacuum is always filled by the right-wing fundamentalist group. In Bangladesh, there are those large-wing Islamist group. Other countries, there will be other religious extremist group as well. So it's nothing that happening in Bangladesh is not something new. It is happening there. And I know we are approaching towards the end, but if I can quickly show you some of the very current incidents. Just 2 days ago, not only the women or the minorities, they are being victim of it. Muslim men and boys, gradually their turn came as well. So they are being victim. We have seen 2 days ago a young schoolboy. He finished their football match going home wearing shorts, and some of the Islamic extremists, they actually stopped him saying, why are you wearing something like this? Don't you have anything better to wear? So as you can imagine, if this thing is being allowed by the government, what can happen in future? I have seen many of the country, being very honest, many of the country, many of sane people, they are being very hopeful that something positive will happen after this election. One of these very positive cheerleader is the European Election Observing Committee. They're cheerleading that election, saying the election will go on well and things will be better. But after this election, in the absence of Awami League, who will come to power? These people. Those people, either they're extremist by their political choice, or they're extremist friendly, or they have some extremist mindset that they can hide for some time but not very long. So without the absence of Awami League, those right-wing religious fundamentalist group will take the power, not only by the government but by other sectors in Bangladesh as well. And
Thank you.
Mr. Day, is it okay if I take 30 seconds?
Yes, go ahead.
Just to let you know, because Awami League, I forgot to mention this, Awami League was not allowed to participate in the election. Can I just ask, let's not read it. Can I just ask, what mandate? Did they have any chance to appeal? Did they have anywhere to go to show their case, saying, this is our case, and I want to go for a fair battle to participate in this election? No. So Awami League is not in there, not participating in election, and the Islamist is taking over Bangladesh. You like it or not, that's the reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Meher. And on that note, Mr. Hassan, I would like to come to you for one last time. How do you see the future? If you could just, we have literally 2 minutes. How do you see the future in light of what Ms. Meher said, that if Jamaat Islami and their alliances, they get formidable majority or some sort of position in the next parliament, what would be the situation for Bangladesh, particularly for international communities who are, according to Ms. Meher, cheerleading this election?
I'll be very brief. Yes, we need to marshal our forces. Ms. Rana Meher's in a prognosis, her dire warning of what might happen is taken into account. So in order to prevent these radical forces, Islamist forces, non-secular forces from taking over Bangladesh completely, our secular forces, the Awami League and other secular forces, they have to marshal their ideas together, their strategies together. Right now, what we have been pushed to a precipice where the country is now somehow it is in an existential crisis, the country, Bangladesh, and it has been pushed to a medieval era. We live in a medieval age. What we need for the country, for our political forces, for our secular political forces and academics and secular people all over Bangladesh, and also the international community, which believes in democracy, which believes in representative government, they have to ensure that Bangladesh re-emerges from this medieval cave and returns to the 21st century. That is a tall order, but then in order to save the country, in order to save Bangladesh, we have to launch the struggle. Now, you might say that it will be a new war of liberation that we will need to fight in order to beat back these forces of darkness.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan, and thanks, my esteemed panelists. Dear viewers, The unfolding political crisis in Bangladesh underscores a profound and deliberate dismantling of democratic norms that you have listened and learned from our panelists, where participation is no longer a right but a privilege granted by a selective few at the very top of the power. By banning the Awami League, removing it from ballot, prosecuting its leaders, and criminalizing its supporters, the interim government has engineered an electoral environment in which political competition is structurally impossible. What remains is not an election, but a managed outcome, which we have learned from our panelists, one that reshapes the political landscape by design, but not by people's will. As our panelists highlight, when mainstream democratic forces are barred from participating, the resulting vacuum is quickly filled by extremist actors, opportunistic alliances, and criminal networks, destabilizing institutions and eroding public trust. The implications extend far beyond Bangladesh's border that we have to remember, particularly our international community, our international friends should remember that this will not just be confined within Bangladeshi border. Political exclusion in South Asia historically produced not stability but radicalization, weakened governance, the transnational security threats, the resurgence of extremist groups, growing hostility towards minorities, and the rehabilitation of criminalized political figures represent early warnings for a deeper instability in the region. This episode makes us firmly believe and being conscious about the future, what future holds for us. For Bangladesh and the region, the stakes are not merely political, as Mr. Hassan said, it is existential rather. The international community, therefore, must view silence not as neutrality, but as complicity in normalizing exclusion as a tool of governance. We rest our case here today. I am Professor Bidide signing off till we meet next time. Thank you very much.